and we're like, here's a welcome. Thank you for showing up today. This is our last big training before we actually start seeing our students this semester, so we thought it'd be good to regroup and refresh and just kind of go over some of the details for this next semester. Why don't we go around the room and just say your name and what college you're with, so that way all of the team on the other end of this phone knows who's in the room, and we'll start right here.
Robert Page-Smith, College of Health and Human Services.
Ross Whitten, College of Social Sciences.
Ivy Fitzpatrick, Crummins School of Education and Human Development.
Liliana Segura, Craig School of Business Advising Center.
Catherine Kukar, Craig School of Business Advising Center.
Grace Castaneda, College of Health and Human Services.
Alexis Holliday, College of Science and Math.
Stephanie Kovacevic, College of Science and Math.
Miles Gill, College of Science and Mathematics.
Crystal Hall, College of Arts and Humanities.
Terrence Swan, Jordan College of Ag.
Taylor Caldera, Jordan College of Ag. Daniel Clark, Jordan College of Ag.
All right. So we have all of our representation here, which is very exciting. What we're doing is just a review. We're researching to see if students with the intervention group make greater academic progress compared to those that don't have these extra interventions. So we have a sample of students, and half of them will be a treatment group that get all of our multiple interventions, and then the other half is what we call the control group. So we're not doing any special outreach to them. However, if they do access all of these services, that's totally fine. So we don't need to say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not part of this group, I can't see you, or no, you can't do your ed plan or any of those things. So we still do advising as general, but this treatment group is going to be receiving multiple interventions additionally that the control group will not be receiving. And so next, we're up to Ashley's turn now.
Okay, so I think you guys have been told this before, but again, just as a refresher, so as soon as we get the numbers from OIE, I will code everybody, but we're still working out those numbers to make sure we have enough of a sample size. So as soon as that's done, you know, they had to wait for grades to post and see who's going to be attending here and whatnot. But once that's done, I'll code the students. So they'll be coded in PeopleSoft, which will transfer into grades first. So the first cohort, which will be the spring cohort, they'll be coded as a category of TRT1 for treatment group 1. And then in fall, the second group will be coded as TRT2. So if you guys want to pull any reports, you can pull it off of that category. When you're meeting with students, you'll see that that flag is there, so you know they're part of the treatment group. If the student is part of the control group, they're not going to be coded because we're not pulling that. That has nothing to do with your guys' intervention. And then the hold that's going to be placed on the treatment group, I'll place that hold as soon as I have everybody coded. And it's just going to be a tag in grades first, and it'll just say iPASS. You guys all have the ability to list that hold, but you don't have to worry about placing the hold. Okay, so just a little bit about the outreach for this entire intervention. So not all of this is going to lie on you guys. This is where we're looking at hiring peer mentors and things like that. But just so you have a basic understanding, what will happen is once we have the students from OIE, Kathy will send out a passive consent email so the students can opt out of sharing their information with the research team. So they'll receive that, letting them know they're participating in this study, and then they have the option to opt out of sharing their information. So that'll go out hopefully before school starts. And then the next step will be a campaign that you guys will send out to your students, and it'll just be a general welcome. All of these are already written out. You guys literally just have to copy and paste it and set your availability and so on. So the first one is just a welcome, and they have to sign up for the My Degree Plan workshop. And that'll be the first greeting. And then you'll do an additional campaign after they've attended the My Degree Plan workshop. They have to meet with you one-on-one. So at that one-on-one session is when the hold gets listed. So then there'll also be some general outreaches. This is going to take place after the early alert have gone out. This is going to be done by the peer mentors. So it's going to be phone calls to students who receive early alerts, just checking in. If that needs to be escalated to an advisor, then we'll have that happen, and we want to talk to you guys about that today too. And then at the end of the semester, we are going to send kind of like a good luck on your finals, just a reminder to register, and that'll just be an email. So you guys are responsible for the 2 campaigns, the campaign for the My Degree Plan workshop, the campaign for the one-on-one appointment, and then the additional email at the end with the good luck info.
So we're all sending out individual campaigns to our students for the workshops?
Yes.
And it'll be a group thing, so all of the workshops will be programmed for that link, right?
Yeah, so once I have all the locations confirmed for the workshop, then we can set, like, the availability for everybody.
And so when the student signs up, they'll be able to see how many students are signed up for that workshop, but your name and will be, well, probably just be our names listed, huh?
I don't know, we'll have to kind of test it out.
So, you know, all the emails are templates that we've already gotten approved through the iPASS people. So it's just a matter of, like what Ashley said, you copy and paste. We'll have the timeline. We have guidelines for you, guidelines for the peer mentor. So it's pretty laid out for you, so you know what date to do what.
And if when we set up the workshop campaign, if it's like, oh, we'll just send it from, like, the generic email, if that's easier, we can adjust it at that time. Because sometimes when you do the group workshops, it gets tricky. So we'll see. So again, just a review on, you guys have, it says advisor guidelines, peer guidelines, those 2 handouts. Those just kind of go over again what are the additional responsibilities for you guys, and then what would be the additional responsibilities for the peers. So again, just the campaigns, the emails, the follow-up on the alerts. It's basically a lot of what you guys are already doing. It's just specific to this population that's going to be the target group, so treatment group.
And we have a discussion later about the peer mentors. Okay.
So I know earlier too we had discussed, like, for me to send you guys reminders, like, hey, don't forget to send out your campaign this week. So I'm still happy to do that, just as like a reminder for you guys. So, but we also gave you the little guidelines, so if you want to fill it in on your calendar or whatever keeps you most organized.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so again, the intervention that we're looking at doing is kind of 2 parts. So they're going to have to attend the My Degree Plan workshop. That workshop is going to not only consist of teaching the student how to use the My Degree Plan tool, but it's also going to talk to them about things to consider when they are using it. So things like course sequencing, time management. You know, do you work full-time and you're trying to schedule 20 units in your semester? Are you trying to take 2 lab classes at the same time? Like, just different things like that. We also have put in, like, an activity where they'll partner up with somebody in the workshop and talk about their career goals and just to kind of get them more invested in creating their degree plan so that they feel a little bit more connected to it versus just like, oh, let me drag and drop these classes and go get my whole listed. So we're trying to make it to where they actually understand the benefit of this tool, talking to them about how the university wants to use this for course planning, how it can save them time and money in the end. So the workshop is going to be pretty interactive. That's the first part of this intervention is they have to attend one of those workshops. The second step is after they've attended that workshop, they're going to schedule the one-on-one appointment with yourselves. So the advising session, we agreed on doing the 1-hour session. We want the students to be there for like 45 minutes minimum, you know, so just to make sure we're getting like the most thorough and in-depth conversations that we can. So I know that might kind of cause some issues on your guys' calendars. So Kathy and I are here to help you guys with that and figuring that out, so just let us know. So it's two parts. They attend the workshop and then they attend the one-on-one. Once they've attended the one-on-one, that's when the hold gets lifted. These are the dates and times, obviously subject to change, because I don't know if you guys have tried booking workshops lately, but it's crazy to find rooms right now. So this is what I have so far. If any of you guys want to help with any of these workshops, please, please, please email me. We were just trying to lessen the burden, and we had a couple advisors volunteer to help, so they are obviously on here already, but we are more than happy to have multiple advisors at these workshops. So if you review these and say, hey, I can be at that one, that would be awesome, but you're not expected to. So whatever you guys want to do. And I might need a babysitter on Saturday, February 11th, so if anybody wants to babysit while I do that workshop, just saying.
Andrew's cute.
He's a cute kid.
So the workshops are only going to be offered during this 1 week only?
Yes.
And so then is it contingent for the whole removal to based on this group session along with the individual? So if they miss this?
Yeah, so... And the peer mentor is going to be calling these students, like, hey, you need to book a workshop, hey. And if it doesn't, obviously there's going to be cases, like, maybe there's a student who literally is, like, out of town that whole week or something like that. That's something that we'll have to address as it comes up. I don't think it's going to be that many. But I tried to do evenings. We're doing a Saturday. I did mornings. So, but, yeah, this is kind of their one chance to do the workshop. Now, the workshop is only going to be 50 minutes, but we have the rooms reserved for an hour and a half because if anybody wants to stay behind and actually, like, work on their degree plan, then we'll be there to assist them with that. But the workshop itself would be, like, from 10 to 10:50. So hopefully they could come in between class. But, yeah, there is going to be cases where students probably might have, you know, conflicts and they just can't make it, so we'll have to address those as they come up. But the peer mentor is going to be calling students that haven't scheduled. They're also going to be calling students the day before their workshop to remind them about their workshop. And then you have another handout, which is the toolkit. It used to be as a guide for you for guiding questions and to make sure multiple topics are covered during the one-on-one advising session. So this is not for the group workshop. This is your one-on-one advising session. We will email you the final version so you can have access to it on your desktop or wherever you want to save this type of stuff so it's easily accessible. After we're done with this portion here, Suri's going to go over the rest of this in a lot of detail so we can explain the toolkit, because when we first did this and we broke into group sessions and did one-on-ones, you know, at that first training, it was kind of confusing because we didn't really sit and thoroughly explain what the toolkit is and how to use it. So we're going to go over that in more detail in just a bit. But basically, most of these questions that are part of the toolkit came from you folks. And then we just added a few extras. So the toolkit we're going to send you, make sure you have access to it, but we're going to go over in detail during this session. And then after you do the one-on-one session, you can go ahead and release the hold from the students. And then we'll give you more details. Let's do the advising summary like you're used to doing. And then the very back page of this handout is the template to use for your notes. So you'll, you know, save this wherever it's easy for you, your desktop, a folder, however you do it. But when you're doing your advising session report, this is what you'll use and copy and paste it into grade first in your advising report section. Does that make sense? I see one person on the minute. Yeah. All in agreement? Say aye. So it's a little more structured than many of us are used to, but it's used to help us make sure we cover the things that we need to cover to make this a valid note-taking detail. This course discussion, because the first section in the toolkit is going over, current experiences. Did you talk about their major? What did you go over in their review? Did you give them any to-dos or assignments for their fall semester? And then any other additional information that you discussed that doesn't necessarily fit those other discussion topics. So again, you're still doing your normal advising, but we're just ensuring that certain things are covered during this session. Do you have any questions on that? There may be things like that got brought up before, for instance, when we had that first training. Well, what if they change their major, and what if this, and what if that? Basically, if a treatment student changes their major to another major that's in the study, because we'll all have a list of all of the majors that are included, so you'll know. And again, wherever you want to save that, so it's easy for you. That's great. So if they change it before the advising session, probably just alert the other counselor, but we'll walk through these. They decide to transfer to a major that's not a part of the study. How are we going to handle that? And then if they decide to take a leave of absence or withdraw during the semester, then you just need to let Ashley or myself know. So if they're leaving Fresno State for that semester, definitely let us know. And then for the other two sessions, how are we going to handle that, Ashley? It's going to be, we'll talk about it later. Or if they decide to, if they're staying within the major studies that's part of the session, then I think just let the new advisor know, oh, hey, this person's part of the control group, the hold's still on there, everything is still on there, so you can track that they're part of the treatment plan. So if they're starting out in biology, but they decide they want to do, family food science, those both of those majors are part of the iPASS thing, so the hold can stay, and, the next group will just take over and make sure they finish it.
I think they're going to create a document for them.
Is there a list of majors that are part of the?
Yeah, we'll send that
so
to you.
They're going to create like a guide for you guys of saying like if a student changes their major to biology, they're in the study.
Cool.
So yeah, more to come.
More to come, but just know we are trying to address those. If you think of anything that you're curious about, just shoot Ashley or myself an email. We'll make sure we try to include it on these unique situations as best we can. And again, most of it is, you guys are great counselors, and so you can use your judgment on many of these things too, but if you do have questions, we're here for you. And now I think I'm transferring it over to you, Rudy.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
It's all yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us again today. I'm excited to be speaking with all of you again, and very excited that we're almost at the launch of this study. So, so thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. All right, so as Ashley mentioned, one of the core components of the intervention for this study is a 1-hour advising session. So for this session, we have developed what we are calling an advising toolbox. That's the document that Ashley and Kathy distributed, and I'll just pause for a moment and make sure everybody has that in front of them.
You guys all have this? Yeah?
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful. So the remainder of today's session, we're going to talk through the toolbox and then do some exercises to practice using the toolbox. Now, before we go any further, let me emphasize one point. The toolbox is to be used when meeting with students who are in the treatment group. And then after meeting with them, you go ahead and lift that registration hold. So it is strictly for the study. It's not for use generally with any of the students that you're meeting with, and specific to this intervention. Okay, so what is the toolbox? Why did we develop it? The toolbox is not a script. I think that Kathy already mentioned that. It's not about a list of questions or a list of topics that you have to follow in a particular order. Rather, it's a tool that we have developed with the intention to help advisors achieve an advising as teaching approach to their advising session. So meaning creating an advising experience in which the advisor is like a teacher and facilitates student learning and cognitive development. So the toolbox achieves this in 3 ways. First, you'll note that it outlines a set of topics and a set of guiding questions that are really intended to support this kind of interactive dialogue with a student. So again, it's not about using all of these questions or using them in a particular order. The idea is just to cover all of the topics and to do that through this open-ended interactive exchange that helps students learn and develop. The toolbox also facilitates learning by outlining 4 overarching learning objectives. In other words, these are the objectives that give you folks some direction on what we're hoping students are going to learn during this advising session that's specific for the intervention. Now finally, there are select guiding questions that are included in the toolbox that are specifically designed to help students develop these metacognitive skills. So develop their awareness, their understanding of what it means to be in college and when and how to use various problem-solving strategies. Okay, so just to summarize then, what is the toolbox? It's not a script. It's not something you have to follow in a particular order. Rather, it's a set of topics to cover and a set of suggested questions, many of which are questions that you probably already use. But having the toolbox provides some consistency in what we're achieving in these advising sessions with the students in the treatment group, which you can imagine is important for the purposes of the study. It also provides clear objectives and topics and really pushes us to focus on that metacognitive piece. So we're really maximizing this hour time that seems like such a luxury that we have with students and really creating a meaningful learning experience. So I'll pause there for a moment and see if we have any questions about why we developed the toolbox and what the goals of the toolbox are.
Yeah, we have one question.
So
Great.
Scripts, look, we have to cover all the topics in the first session?
I'm sorry, Ashley, could you repeat the question? I couldn't quite hear, or if you can answer it, that's fine too.
No, it's, do we have to cover
Like
all the topics that are listed in the toolkit?
Yes, so there are 5 overarching topics, and we'll get to that. But you'll see that those topics are rather big, so it shouldn't be too difficult to cover those topic areas. And the objectives that are listed under those topics are, again, intended to guide you toward this more advising as teaching approach. But covering all of the topics is something that we ask. How you do it, what questions you use is up to you. So we have their suggested questions that we hope you consider, but all of those questions aren't things that have to be used, and you may come up with others that you think are more appropriate for you.
Did that answer it?
But yes, all 5 topic areas, and while there aren't specific questions you have to ask, the idea is to use those kinds of open-ended questions to have this interactive exchange with the student. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Do the hour-long appointment because this is a pretty involved. Any other questions? Nope. One more.
What's the process? Do you have notes in here about my degree plan? If they don't have it done, then we're supposed to kind of walk them through setting it up. Do we do that and then send them away and have them schedule a follow-up when they're done with the plan? Because we're supposed to be reviewing it with them.
You can use your discretion on that, but the peer mentors will be calling and reminding them to have it ready before they show up to your appointment. But if they're like, nope, I just want to sit with them and do it, then you can spend like the first few minutes explaining it and then kind of talk about other things. What do you think, Huri?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and like you said, some of this is based on your discretion. Our hope is that most students are going to come with the start of a degree plan at least, especially based on what Kathy said, that peer mentors will be calling them ahead of time, telling them to do so. But what you'll also see in the My Degree Plan section of the toolbox, at least what we've tried to achieve there, is the idea that it's not just about having the toolbox completed, but there could be a very fruitful discussion there about adjusting the My Degree Plan or helping students understand the value of the degree plan. So it is up to your discretion, but I think what you'll find is that there'll be opportunity to at least help a student start the degree plan and still have a meaningful conversation with them about their course taking. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, so just want to reiterate again, a lot of what's in this toolbox are things that did come directly from you. If you recall, a couple of months back, we did a quick one-question survey asking folks from each of the 3 RCT colleges to share with us the types of guiding questions that you already use in your advising sessions. What we've done is we've taken that and we've tried to build on it with the literature and in collaboration with Kathy and Ashley to really get at more of this developmental advising as teaching approach to an advising session. Okay, so let's move on to what's actually in the toolbox. So one of the first things I'll note, and it's actually not on the slides here, but I do want to point out, is that we've identified a brief section right in the middle of the toolbox document that identifies some pre-work. So if you get a chance before you meet with a student, if you can take a quick peek and see if they've completed the My Degree Plan and if they have any flags that have been raised or if the peer mentors have flagged anything for you based on those conversations, that could be useful information to draw on when meeting with the student. Okay, next in the toolbox, we have the 4 learning objectives that I mentioned earlier. So students will learn some basic information during this advising session, like what is the role of an advisor, what are the resources that are available at CSU Fresno, and where can they go to find that support. Students will also learn skills like how to create and adjust a degree roadmap and the behavioral strategies that can help them succeed academically. And the final learning objective that we've articulated here is around cognitive development. So students will be expected to begin to have a more deeper understanding of how their current course taking and their degree roadmap leads to their long-term academic, career, and life goals. Helping students make that connection is a really key part of this kind of advising as teaching approach and what we're hoping to achieve during this advising session, leveraging the My Degree Plan.
I have a question on second or the 3rd learning objective where skills are. There, we have SupportNet counselors who help students to reflect on current challenges and learn behavioral skills that are more beneficial to their learning. And so I'm wondering, is that something that we should be doing, or maybe we should be referring those students over to SupportNet?
I'm not sure I'm too familiar with SupportNet, so I'll let Ashley and Kathy jump in here as well. I'll just note that from our perspective, you'll see again in the topics and guiding questions that certainly referring students to other services is part of what we expect will happen, but that there still is opportunity to have a conversation with a student about how they can do, what they can do to succeed in their classes. Particularly like if you take the example.
And I see that with the open-ended question, what are some of the challenges that you're facing? You know, and so you kind of gauge where the student is at, how they're spending their time in terms of studying, and some of the academic language acquisition issues that they're having. It could be, you know, how to carefully read a textbook in order to dissect it, to prepare for an exam. But those are all things that, again, are, you know, referred over to SupportNet because those are the individuals that are actually trained to handle those particular issues.
And
You still would do
You would
that.
still would do that. This would just be identifying that, so the student has that conversation with you about their struggles in a particular class and why, and then you can still refer them to that source. We're not expecting you to sit there and create the study plan and teach them how to read their textbook. That's not on us now, and it won't be on us for this study either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
yeah.
make sure
yeah.
we're not overlapping in terms of what's expected of us.
No, I think we're just helping them identify, and if they do have something they need to work on, then we can do the appropriate referral.
out.
Yeah. Good clarifying question.
Okay, great. Okay, so can we move on, or are there any other questions?
Go ahead, move on.
All right, great. Okay, so to meet those learning objectives, the toolbox covers 5 topics, 5 very broad topics. Now, each of these topics is listed on the left-hand side of the table on the document that you have that follows the learning objectives. And the topic areas are, introduction and building rapport, checking in on current experiences, academic and career goals, my degree plan, and a concluding action plan section. Again, the objective is to cover these topic areas that are broad, but through an interactive, open-ended dialogue. And again, not in any particular order. I can imagine that you would jump around a lot of this. So let's dig into each of these areas a bit more. Now, I'll note that what you have in front of you is more detailed than what I've put on the slides. That's strictly because of space and time, but what I'll emphasize here are just some of the core objectives and some of the key guiding questions that are part of each of the topic areas. Okay, so with introduction and building rapport, of course, that's really straightforward. It's about clarifying what the student is seeking from the session with questions like, what's something that you would like to discuss during this time? Now, checking in on current experiences. So this is an opportunity for students to tell you how they think their semester is going, and then you can imagine cross-referencing what they tell you about the semester with what you're seeing in their grades, their early alert flags, and other data, and really figure out what the student may be missing in terms of their accurate awareness of their performance. So it's then an opportunity to help the student think critically about their current experiences and the implications it has for their academic progress. We imagine that this will also be a time to address any social, motivational, or personal issues that the student may raise or that you may find as you probe the student on how their semester is going. Now, the corresponding guiding questions that I've highlighted here as examples are questions that, again, get at that metacognitive skill building piece. So questions like, what do you do between classes, before classes, after classes? How many hours do you think it takes to be successful in a course? These just provide a way in to help students identify potential issue areas and then begin to think critically about what skills they need in order to be able to succeed in college and have that awareness of what it means to succeed in college. So going back to the conversation we had just earlier, I'm imagining that these kinds of questions could be ins to help you identify what are the issues that the student may be struggling with, have a basic conversation with the student about things that they can do to address those challenges and refer them then out to the experts who can really help them dig in on what those issue areas are. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Great. Let me ask one follow-up question before we move on about the support net advisors. I'm just curious, will they have access to any of the notes that advisors put in to Grades First?
Yes, they have access to all the notes that we as advisors enter in.
Oh, great. So you can imagine then how being able to dig in on really identifying what issues are present could support them in their work too once the student is referred out to them.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, come on, Arrow, work with me. Okay, great. Now, we all know that iPASS is not about transactional advising. I mean, we covered that during our first session and really tried to emphasize that it's about facilitating developmental advising, leveraging the technology. And one of the core ways that we're trying to move away from a more transactional discussion about current and upcoming semesters is about really focusing the dialogue on broader academic and career goals. So this topic area is about helping the student understand degree requirements, but also helping students articulate what they want to study and why, and what they're hoping to achieve after college with their degree. Now, I definitely understand that CSU Fresno has a career office, so part of this is connecting students with the Career Center, but there's also an opportunity here to help students explore things like internships, study abroad options, research projects, or other activities that can really help them achieve their academic and career goals. And you can imagine that this is a nice context for having that discussion around the My Degree Plan, because you can connect what is in the degree plan to these broader academic and career goals. Okay, so the My Degree Plan section. Of course, this is a core part of the toolbox. This is an iPASS study, and one of your core iPASS technologies is the My Degree Plan. But if you recall, during our first session together last semester, I kept trying to emphasize that iPASS is not about having the technology. It's not about having a degree plan just filled out for the students. I hope it's clear that the objectives and questions that are listed here, that the idea is to have a discussion of My Degree Plan that's not just about making sure that the student has a degree plan. It's about using the My Degree Plan to help the student really think critically about their pathway to a degree. So that means working with the student to adjust the degree plan to accurately reflect their academic and career goals, and using the information in My Degree Plan to help the student develop a game plan for succeeding in those courses. So for example, you can use the information in My Degree Plan to help the students answer questions like what part of this plan might be challenging, help them really identify where they think they might struggle, and then ask questions like, can you think of strategies to address those challenges in advance? So again, the conversation is about using the information in My Degree Plan to identify potential issues and then strategize on resolving those issues. One of the other questions that we've had here, very similar in nature, is again about time management. I think Ashley mentioned time management as one of the things you want to pay attention to when helping the student adjust or fill out the My Degree Plan. Questions like, tell me about a tough deadline you were able to meet, how did you do it, could provide an opening to help the student identify, how are they in terms of managing their time, and how can that affect their ability to succeed and what they have planned out. So again, it gets at that metacognitive piece, helping students build their problem-solving skills using the information that you have in My Degree Plan. All right. The final section is, again, pretty straightforward. It's a conclusion. The idea is that this also has an action plan component. Students will leave the advising session with some clear next steps and an accountability to you for achieving those next steps. So that may be things like 3 people they want to talk to explore job options. Like one of those people could be the career office. Another person might be the support net advisor. The idea is making sure the student leaves with some clarity and having an action plan for how to achieve their goals. I'll pause here for a moment and see again if there are any questions.
Doesn't look like it. People are just looking at the paper, so I think we're okay.
You're okay. That could be either a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But again, a lot of this, as you can see, especially those topic areas, are rather large. They're there to prompt you to make sure to have that conversation around each of those topics and hopefully you'll find that the objectives under there, again, will provide some guidance to, and just even a prompt to help make sure that certain things are covered. You have an hour-long session, and hopefully we can maximize that. And I hope you'll see that the guiding questions, a lot of them are questions that you probably already use. Some of them are literature-based and suggestions for really extending that conversation to be even more interactive, to be even more focused on this metacognitive skill-building piece. And if you do have any questions or suggestions, I think we'll be finalizing this in the next week or so. So please send those our way. I think we're just about there with it. But if there are any tweaks that folks want to recommend, we will certainly welcome hearing those. Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments, we can move on to the more interactive piece of the day. Okay, great. So we've included here a scenario of an advising session with some background information for a student named Joey Smith. The idea is for us all to take a moment to read through this scenario and then to pair up and practice utilizing the toolbox to have a conversation with Joey. So if we can have one person in a group of two be the student, another person the advisor, then we can do some role playing utilizing the toolbox, and then we'll come together as a group and discuss what issues came up and how the role playing exercise went. So for this, I'll then turn it over back to you, Ashley, if you want to get us organized for this.
Yeah. So if there's enough to just everybody partner up. And then, like Hudi said, one person be the student, one person be the advisor. So go ahead and read through the scenario, and then we'll give you guys probably about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll all regroup to just kind of discuss how the toolbox went. Do you feel that you were able to cover some of the questions? Again, you don't have to script this out or anything, but just in reading this and thinking about what was included in the toolbox, we just kind of want to see if we need to make any changes to this so that it's helpful for you guys versus like a hindrance. So if you guys just want to partner up with somebody, and then, like I said, 10, 15 minutes, we'll kind of come together again.
Are we ready to come back together as a group? Yeah?
So does that include
All right, Hui, we're back as a group. So do you have some comments now? So you're on.
Okay, wonderful. That sounded really kind of like a lot of good conversations were happening, so I'm looking forward to hearing about that. So we thought we would spend the remainder of our time having a really meaningful discussion about the exercise that was just completed. So we've got a list of discussion questions that we can address. Let's start with the first one. And I believe, Ashley, you'd mentioned you've got a whiteboard there. You want to write some stuff up as things come up. We thought we would all get on the same page on what were the problems or issues that were raised in the scenario that you addressed during your session. So I'll turn it over back to you, Ashley, to kind of facilitate the conversation around that question.
Yeah, so if we just want to go around the room, maybe hear from each group. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of groups talked about the same things, but I think it's always interesting to hear just other points of view. You know, like I'm sure Ivy might have picked out something that I wouldn't have picked out, just different things like that. So if each group maybe just wants to share a little something, we can make it more of a dialogue. It doesn't have to be like
around the room circle.
Yeah. So just, you guys want to shout out what different problems or issues after you read the scenario did you come up with?
Maybe pressure from the family, from the father to go into accountancy and be a CPA.
Yes, definitely. What else?
Frequent early alert referrals.
We had two, so we had to hear.
Any other things that came up?
He did poorly his first year. And only accumulated 16 units with a 1.2 GPA.
He specifically is doing poorly in courses for his major.
Also, we were talking about resources. Had he been referred to and or had he actually gone to, reached out to?
Glad you're over there doing that, not me.
He had a tough time transitioning to college his first year.
Yeah, which I thought that was interesting because it's like it states that when he comes in to see you, he's very like happy and outgoing. So it's like, what was that transition? You know, why was it rough for him?
That's why he didn't do well his first year, but then he's also still not doing well. So
yeah, where's that gap?
And he also stated that he learned his lesson and would improve. I'm curious, is he starting his third semester or is he in his fourth?
Whatever you want him to be.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
I think we also kind of touched on, you know, if he, obviously, like the conversation would have had to have happened of, do you even want to do accountancy, right? Like they brought up. But also following that, he seems like kind of cocky, you know? It's like he's coming from a family of CPAs, and that's like his bloodline, and he's coming in. I'm supposed to be really good at economics and accountants, you know, doing all that stuff. Like, so there's almost like an air of he doesn't quite understand what his weaknesses are and his challenges.
Yeah, we were talking about how we're not sure, like, does he know his natural skills and interests, or is it something where he's, I'm not talking family pressure, I'm just saying, has he always seen it and that's just where he thinks he's going, or does he know anything about what he actually, has he ever really thought about what he wants to do?
What he wants to do.
Yeah.
Or what he's naturally good at.
Those are good.
Economics is not easy, that's a
He's on academic disqualification, right? So he's at risk of not coming back.
Yeah.
Because technically he's still a freshman.
You guys came up with a lot more than I did.
I know. See? Great minds in this room. Fantastic.
So I think that that's good. So for the second question, how did you guys use the toolbox? Did you find yourself referring to it, or did you find that it all just kind of came natural and then you looked back at it and were like, oh, wow, I did answer a lot of those? What did you guys think? Did you not?
We started out knowing that we'd already built rapport and introductions. Like, I don't know, because I thought we needed to use this, I was being more diligent about saying that, and then it just kind of fell in where, oh, we're going to check in on his current experiences, and then we started talking, and then she said, oh, and then some of these questions we already had thought about. So it was kind of we knew this is where we were going, but also was kind of referring to this.
I thought it was pretty natural. It's pretty natural of the common sessions that occur in our advising sessions.
Yeah. I think so, too. I was telling Kathy that I think I cover a lot of this stuff, but the way some of these are worded are cool. Like, I like the one about the deadline, like, tell me about a tough deadline you were able to meet, how'd you do it? Like, that's a good question for a student where, you know, I may have just said, did you get all your assignments in? You know what I mean? So just kind of, I think it is. It's natural. You guys are all great advisors, so we all naturally do these things, but it just kind of might freshen the way we ask things. So
we were going through some of these questions and thought, wow, these are more creative than I would have come up with on my own. So I was going to go back and, like, circle some of these questions and go, I want to include that in, you know, open-ended questions, because I tend to personally default to more yes or no, but keep looking at them, and then they kind of expand on stuff. So I love having a list of some open-ended questions that, you know, can build my repertoire as a counselor. So, you know, I like the what do you do between classes, before classes, and after classes. instead of saying, so what do you do with the time, you know, your free time? This is a lot more specific, and I really liked many of these questions. They were new in my mind after even being an advisor for like 20 years. I hate to say that out loud, but it's true.
Started when you were 5.
I did. I was naturally gifted when I was an infant. So, I mean, like, I just, like we're talking about, you guys, it's just natural, like what you're commenting. It just kind of flows anyway in your conversation, so I think that's encouraging for you guys, I'd hope.
Any other feedback with the toolbox?
Can I jump in for a minute? I'm really intrigued by this conversation. I'm curious from others in the room if there were any questions that stood out to you that you did integrate into the conversation. I like the ones that have come up so far. I'm trying to put stars next to them, but I'm curious if others were intriguing to folks.
Sorry, you just blew me and Cassie away. Nobody else.
Well, no, but I don't want to.
They're looking.
I'm not about to like just reiterate what you just said, but my sentiments exactly.
Okay, sounds good. Well, if any of them come up, and we'll keep trying to think of if there are any others. The other question I had about the toolbox is, if I heard correctly, some of the issues that were raised were around just kind of personal and family dynamics and just Joey's relationship with his dad and how he was influenced by it. I'm curious if the toolbox did enough to help those types of issues come through.
I guess it could fall under the current experiences, or it would just be something we just go off the grid on this and just kind of veer towards the relationship we see with his dad. I mean, there's not a specific, you know, family box on here, but it could be under current experiences, yes.
And it maybe could be brought into the conclusion, like help the student find a way to have a discussion with their family member if they really do want to change out of this family line. You know, I know we've often dealt with, you know, we have a lot of first-gen students that their family expects them to go. I'm sure you guys see it a lot in nursing. My family wants me to be a nurse, but they have no desire. They want to go be a teacher, you know, and helping them with the practical steps on how to have conversations with their parents. That might be part of the conclusion.
I mean, and I saw it when just talking about the academic goals, because you start talking like, what about this major is a good fit or what's not a good fit? And if they start talking about like, this isn't a good fit, I don't like it, you know, parents want me to do, then you can dig into that and, you know, use those as those starter questions to get more information.
Yeah. And even it kind of blends through the whole thing, because even if you start talking about my degree plan, when you start talking about the fact that he's going to have to repeat courses and the amount of time that potentially could start to add on, and you know, then you know, if you think about it in the grander scale, and then if they start to say, well, that's not really where I don't really want to be here for 4.5 more years or something like that, whatever it is, then it ties back to having the, you know, if you didn't already have the career conversation, but like, well, maybe I need to have that conversation of, well, I want to change this. But I think it ties throughout the whole thing. It's not necessarily set in one place, although I do agree that each one it fits in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And maybe the last question I had about using the toolbox for the conversations that you folks just had, one thing we've heard at like the two of the other sites is in this way that we structure the toolbox. You've got this table and it's got the topics, and then they've got you know, some objectives under those topics. What they find, what I've heard has been really helpful is kind of those bullets under the topics, right? A lot of them, again, things that you typically cover, but having it there as a reference, at least for those initial, those first few, you know, meetings with students in the treatment group are helpful. Just kind of go, oh yeah, I covered that, or that's a good list or a good reminder of something that could have been addressed. So I'm curious if you found any of those bullets under those topics helpful, and if not, maybe we can, you know, if you can take a look at those, those could be good guides during those sessions based on what we've heard. Well, that could just be a suggestion. This is something to think about that I'm not sure came through and as we were talking through the toolbox, but I wanted to emphasize. I'll turn it back over to you, Ashley.
So the final question is, how did you reference my degree plan in this conversation, which we've kind of touched on a few things already, talking about how you might have to repeat classes and building that in. Is there anything else? Because again, the point of this study is not the my degree plan. It's a bigger picture of advising in general. So we just want to make sure that, you know, the My Degree Plan tool was utilized, but we don't want it to be the bulk of the conversation. But were you able to integrate it into the conversation?
A bit awkward. It's just kind of thrown in at the end.
Okay.
We kind of talked about everything else. It's like, oh, what I missed, oh, my degree plan. So, I mean, it wasn't at the forefront of the conversation.
Okay.
I mean, he did use it in our conversation. Ross used it to talk about, like, you know, maybe you should reduce your unit load next semester to try and, you know, increase your GPA and things like that, just looking at the courses I had planned. But, yeah, it was kind of thrown in.
I mean, I actually think it's a pretty integral part, but towards the end, after you've done the meat of everything that you're talking about, because for us, it's a visual tool. And that's why I love creating an academic plan and showing the student, obviously coming, like Ross said, coming up with, you know, maybe reducing your load. So using my degree plan to see, well, what types of classes did you take in your first semester? Was it all GE? I mean, clearly they didn't, knowing the major a little bit, accounting for is that real, you know, really that first business class that they're taking, you know, was he taking that with a lot of other courses? Also showing him sequencing, accounting for, you're going to have to repeat that. You can't move on in the major until you really take this course. So having that discussion about how it's going to affect the 4-year term, or is it going to go into 4.5 or even 5, and is that an issue? Is that something that, you know, so I think that while it's not like the main part, it's an integral portion towards the end when you're really trying to tie it back into your college student, and this is your plan and this is your path.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think it's great because it's visual, so it really helps students.
So a lot of students come in
be here for that long, or I didn't realize, you know, I'm taking that many, I planned that many units for next semester.
No. And they don't see that, you know, one leads to the next, leads to the next. This is how you build your major. This is how you build the foundation of knowledge to be an accountant.
And I know I've had some discussions with students that are now later on decided they wanted to go to grad school, but they just kind of dinked around in their GE classes because they didn't take it seriously. And, you know, that connection between what you're doing now will have an effect on your future. You know, even as second, you know, in sophomore status or late freshman status, it's kind of nice to be able to point that out to them now. I mean, I had a student that she may not have gone into vet school because she had 1 B in a 5-unit science class and all the rest of them were A's because she doubled up science one semester, thought she could handle it. And now, like, this goal of hers is in question. So it's kind of like, you know, helping them see that even their GE courses that they may not take seriously do have an impact. And I think this kind of helps that, too. I would, you know, so they can see the connection.
That is why we need my degree plan earlier in the session, I feel like, to have that visual to show them these academic and career goals.
Yeah. And you can move it wherever you want in the session, Ross. You can put it at the very beginning if that's how you want to jumpstart it, you know, get the report started.
I think it's going to be threaded throughout the conversation because, I mean, in order to prepare for the student, you're probably going to take a look at their academic plan to make sure that they're sequencing, accounting for the prerequisites and whatnot. But my question is, what happens when a student just randomly adds courses to their degree plan? How should we handle that situation?
How would you handle it now?
Yeah, we haven't met with the student yet.
So how would you handle it now?
It depends on the advisor. I mean, because you'll have advisors that are really skilled at developing academic plans, and then you're going to have advisors that aren't really skilled.
But what if the student wants to take them just because they want to potentially minor, or they're just interested in sign language, or they really like glass blowing because it's a stress reliever? I mean, those are all okay things to do.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking in terms of sequencing and the prerequisites. If it's all thrown together, it's going to take more time to put that together, right?
So you do want to spend the time to readjust.
At that point, it's going to either we have to do it before the appointment, or we meet with them initially and then have them come back for a follow-up once it's corrected, either by us or by them.
I mean, that's also, I mean, if you're having it at the front end of the whole process, then that ties into, like, if you threw this whole together and then you start having a conversation about the academic career goals as you're discussing it, like, you know, it helps, like you were saying about sequencing and all that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why'd you throw this whole together like this? Well, I have no idea what I want to do. Really.
Right. So it's a good conversation starter.
Well, and like Ashley said, it's not necessarily the goal is that they have it done and completed, but rather that they've started the process and kind of start to see, because it's going to feed into conversations. Not every student's going to be in the same type of boat where it's like, this student had a lot we needed to talk to him about aside from just what his classes for next semester would be. But some students are going to come in completely on track and start to have, and so using them and seeing if they didn't do it or did do it correctly, maybe you have more time with some students than you do with others. And then that's the conversation you had earlier about whether we need to have a follow-up meeting or whatever we wanted to do. But it seems like while it's like we've been stressed the whole time, it's not integrated, it's not the biggest piece of it. If it's not done correctly, like Robert said, it could be another, maybe that's how the student does all their classes too, it just starts to create different conversations.
Yeah, you can see how seriously they really take their education. If they're just throwing a bunch of random stuff in there, maybe they don't understand the big connection, and so that'd be a great talking point that you see. I think like what we were talking about earlier, Hootie, is that, this is a teaching tool, and I wrote down for myself, I want to help them do, but we're teaching them how to, and we're teaching them what to think. So we don't need to sit there and spend 40 minutes redoing their plan with them, because that's more of an enablement. But we can sit and point out the things that we see, things that they haven't, remembered based on the workshop that we gave and roadmaps that we're showing them, and kind of use that as a teaching tool, doing everything.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's how we're seeing this. A lot of the comments that just came out about, there could be mistakes, there could be things on there that don't quite make sense. All of those are the teachable moments. I mean, the idea is to have that conversation with the student on what they need to do to adjust their degree plan, and not make it transactional where you're doing it for them during the session, but helping them understand what are the issues that could come up with them, taking 3 electives or in a particular semester. So to me, all the comments that I heard were really ways of leveraging the tool to have that metacognitive conversation with the student, helping them understand the implications that all of this has for their ability to progress towards a degree. And I'll just note that I really like the idea of my degree plan visually on this toolbox coming up earlier, because again, while it's up to you how you feel comfortable organizing all this, if your eye is naturally drawn to the order of these topics or things to follow, it does make sense that my degree plan comes before the academic and career goals, because it could be a conversation starter where you see that, okay, yes, you have completed this, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why you've chosen to take particular classes this semester or next semester, and it could really lead nicely into that conversation about your broader goals. So I think that that's one shift here that I would advocate for making in terms of the way this toolbox is set up, to really demonstrate that my degree plan is not like, you're not supposed to spend time just talking about what's in there. That's not the core focus, but it is sort of the core focus of the session, in that the other pieces do come back to how the student has set up their pathway for the next few semesters.
Any other comments on the
One other question on the My Degree Plan. Is the expectation that they complete the entire 4 years, or are we looking at maybe them initializing the first 2, or is there a number at all?
I don't think there's a set number. So if they did, maybe they just did like the next 2 semesters of planning. But as far as the study is concerned, the study doesn't, it doesn't matter if they did
as long
their
as
whole
they've
career.
used it. It's integrated.
Yeah, but that would be a conversation that you could have with the student, and that's something too that at the workshop we can talk to them about that too, how far out they want.
Well, when,
and then one thing I'll just add is that you know, while we haven't specified a specific time for the study, I mean, we do generally take the perspective that like that planning out next semester is not sufficient. Like that's not optimizing this tool because it doesn't. It's just planning out one semester ahead and not really planning out towards a degree. So our take is that, you know, you want at least the 2 semesters of planning so that there is that 1 year out plan that a student has. They can start to visualize where it is they're supposed to go, and the further out they plan, obviously, the better.
Alexis, do you have something to add to that?
It's hard with sophomores, especially students doing remediation, because they may not be that far in GE yet, so the next 2 semesters may just be all GE. I mean, I don't have any major conversations with them because they're not jumping into that yet.
Well,
you could still have a conversation.
Yeah, because I would think at the end of their 4th semester, they should be in some major classes. And they're going into their 1, 2, 3, 5th semester when we're meeting with them. So, I mean, how many people in their 5th semester? I mean, I would think most of them should be at least in 1 or 2 major classes to confirm that they're in the major they want to study. I mean, there's no more GE after like 39 to 50 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they should at least have an idea, right, of what they want to study, because part of my degree plan's benefit is that you can plan out a major, and then should it need to be adjusted the following semester when you meet with a student, it can be that, you know, that can happen.
These students have all been here 3 semesters already, and they're in their 4th. So that's the group we're looking at right now. And we didn't do it based on units. We did it based on term of entry, so we knew that they were here 3 semesters and are in their 4th is what we wanted to look at.
And then, Ashley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there are, you know, exception cases like probation students and things that have been excluded from the sample that's part of the study. So students who are really far out shouldn't actually be in the study sample.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not that important. If they don't do it, we can clear their holds after meeting with them.
So, okay. Let me articulate.
I'm sorry, Ashley, what was the question?
The question was, if my degree plan isn't completed, can they clear the hold? So our hope is, with all of these additional interventions that we're doing, with having the workshop be a requirement, with having the phone calls being made about the workshop, that they will at least be aware of my degree plan and the benefits that it can serve them. Like I said, the workshop isn't just the how to do the degree plan. It's getting the student invested in this tool and how it can impact their time here. So we're hoping with that they do have my degree plan started, or at least understand it. I would say if you met with the student, they didn't have it done, but you sat down and had like heart-to-heart meaningful conversation about their education and about career goals, then lift the hold. I wouldn't punish that student because they didn't do the degree plan, but I feel like with all the other intervention that we're doing, majority are going to have it done.
And the fact if they come to you after having all that intervention and didn't do the plan, you need to have a conversation with that student about why are you in college if you're not willing to take advantage of the tools we're giving you. So I don't think, Ross, that the My Degree Plan is not important. It is important. It's a tool that we want them to use. It will help them see the bigger picture, and it's a conversation starter, and to teach them how to create it, because it will help them see the connection between their college and their career.
Like a minimum expectation.
Absolutely.
She said like a year out.
Yeah.
I think it's like 2 years out. Because you would want them planning essentially into their senior year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why that would be an issue.
So when we do the workshops, we can encourage them, you know, we advise that you plan at least the next 4 semesters so you see how things, you know, connect and what the relationship is between classes and prerequisites and how it all affects your plan. Absolutely. I think we can set that expectation. right.
Okay. So I think we have just a few minutes left. Are there any other questions? I think this has been a really fruitful conversation. Are there any other questions at this point that we want to raise?
I guess not. People are just here.
All right.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, I think we have just a few more weeks until these workshops happen and students will start getting prompted to set up these one-on-one sessions with you. So we've got just a couple of weeks left to do any final tweaks to this. I know we've got a few things that I've jotted down from today's session, and I'll make those adjustments, but very shortly we'll have a final draft of this to you, and hopefully you'll find it useful. And again, if anything does come up in the next week or so, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And Kathy and Ashley have our email addresses, and there's more contact information here. Throughout this next semester, we will be here to support this process. It is, I understand, a heavy lift, but we'll be there in every way we can to help facilitate it and learn from it. And one of the things I mentioned the last time we were on site is this is an RCT. We will have an impact analysis, so a traditional measure of progression and the impact the intervention has had on student progression, but there's a whole other component that's about understanding how these types of interventions can be implemented, and we're looking forward to learning from you folks about what the process was like. We'll be on site in a couple of months to start asking you questions about your experience. So we do very much want to learn about how the toolbox works, how the other pieces work, and what we can put out there to the field. And then one last thing I just want to note that I jotted down is keep in mind that this is a 2-semester intervention. You're going to meet with these students again next fall. And in that sense, it's an even more unique opportunity for this kind of a developmental advising session because you have that continuity with the student. So even if this first advising session, some of the questions do feel similar to you, to the things you ask, hopefully having that continuity, having that second semester where you get to touch base with the same student and continue that conversation is rather unique, particularly for this subgroup of students. So, that's one of the ways that we're hoping that this intervention does provide a different, unique, more developmental experience for students. Just wanted to give that context. So, anything else that others on the research team or from the Fresno team want to raise?
We're going to have a conversation. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We're going to have a conversation here about the peer advisor guidelines and stuff.